Donald Trump, the self-styled champion of peace who once fantasized about a Nobel Prize, is now careening toward a military showdown with Venezuela. His decision to deploy 4,000 Marines and a formidable naval armada including the USS Gravely, USS Jason Dunham, USS Sampson, and a nuclear-powered attack submarine off Venezuela's coast is less a calculated strategy and more a desperate cry for attention. The New York Times revealed that Trump issued a secret directive ordering the Pentagon to treat Latin American drug cartels as terrorist organizations, a flimsy pretext for using the military in what is traditionally a law enforcement role. This isn't leadership. It's the flailing of a man who mistakes bluster for strength, dragging the nation into a potential quagmire. Trump's justification hinges on labeling. Cartels like Venezuela's alleged Cartel de los Soles and Sinaloa as terrorist groups, a designation that stretches credibility to the breaking point. Unlike ideologically driven groups like ISIS, cartels are profit-driven criminal enterprises. But Trump, never one for subtlety, sees terrorist as a convenient catch-all to justify his military posturing. This move risks violating the Posse Comitatus Act of 1878, which prohibits the military from engaging in domestic law enforcement without congressional approval. Historically, the Coast Guard has handled drug interdiction with efficiency. Yet, Trump insists on turning a policing operation into a military circus, complete with warships and Marines. It's the kind of overreach that only a confused, attention-starved leader would pursue. The timing of this escalation raises red flags. Just as Trump ramps up tensions with Venezuela, he's opened the door for Chevron to resume operations in a country with the world's largest oil reserves. In late July, he lifted sanctions that had barred U.S. companies from extracting Venezuelan oil, a move that coincided suspiciously with his military buildup and the doubling of a bounty on Maduro head to $50 million. This isn't about drugs, it's about oil and power. Trump's history of cozying up to corporate interests while cloaking his actions in populist rhetoric is well documented, and this smells like another scheme to benefit his cronies at Chevron. While posturing as a tough-and crime crusader, the echoes of the Iraq War, where fabricated threats masked oil-driven ambitions, are impossible to ignore. Trump's directive isn't just reckless, it's a legal minefield. The Posse Comitatus Act clearly bars the military from law enforcement duties. Yet Trump has sidestepped Congress entirely, acting as if he's above the law. Legal experts, like those cited by the Center for American Progress, warn that using the military to target cartels, especially on foreign soil, could violate both domestic and international law. Executive orders from Presidents Carter, Ford, and Reagan further prohibit the assassination of foreign leaders, a line Trump seems eager to cross with his $50 million bounty on Maduro. This isn't governance. It's the petulant whim of a man who sees the presidency as a personal fiefdom. The Pentagon, under the inept leadership of Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, is complicit in this debacle. Hegseth, a former Fox News talking head with no serious governing experience, fired the military's top legal advisors in February, silencing the judge advocates who might have questioned the legality of this operation. The New York Times notes that it's unclear whether the Justice Department's Office of Legal Counsel has reviewed Trump's directive. But given his track record, it's safe to assume he's avoiding scrutiny like the plague. With Hegseth at the helm, the Pentagon is a chaotic mess, blindly executing Trump's orders without the checks and balances that a functioning democracy demands. This isn't Trump's first brush with militarizing domestic issues. His recent move to federalize Washington, D.C.'s police and deploy 800 National Guard troops there, despite a 41% drop in violent crime, shows his obsession with using the military as a political prop. Now, he's exporting that playbook to Venezuela, risking a confrontation that could spiral into disaster. Maduro's response, mobilizing an exaggerated 4.5 million militiamen, may be propaganda, but it hands him a narrative to rally his base against U.S. aggression. Trump, in his infinite wisdom, has turned a manageable issue into a geopolitical flashpoint, proving once again that his leadership is as incoherent as it is dangerous. Nicolas Maduro is no saint. His regime's corruption and human rights abuses are well documented, and his 2020 indictment by the Department of Justice for narco-terrorism underscores his unsavory reputation. But Trump's fixation on him feels less like a principled stand against drugs and more like a calculated power play. The so-called Cartel de los Soles, which the U.S. claims Maduro leads, is viewed by many experts, including Venezuela's defense minister, as a convenient fiction. Evidence linking Maduro to fentanyl trafficking, the cornerstone of Trump's narrative, is thin at best. Yet Trump persists, escalating a personal vendetta into a national security crisis. The Chevron connection is the smoking gun. By allowing U.S. oil companies to resume operations in Venezuela, Trump has revealed his true priorities. Venezuela's oil reserves, estimated at 300 billion barrels, dwarf those of any other nation. Lifting sanctions just as he deploys warships and doubles the bounty on Maduro suggests a cynical strategy: destabilize the region, demonize its leader, and clear the way for corporate profits. This isn't about protecting Americans from drugs. It's about securing resources for Trump's allies. His administration's claim that this is about stopping fentanyl, a drug primarily sourced from Mexico and China, not Venezuela, falls apart under scrutiny. It's a classic Trump batanzwich, using a manufactured crisis to mask corporate greed. Meanwhile, Trump's rhetoric about the drug crisis ignores the domestic side of the equation. The opioid epidemic is fueled as much by demand as supply. Yet his administration has shown little interest in funding prevention, rehabilitation, or community-based solutions. Instead, he's pouring billions into a naval armada to chase cartel boats, a strategy one defense official described to Reuters as overkill. The Coast Guard's recent seizure of 3,500 kilograms of cocaine off the Galapagos Islands shows that law enforcement is already effective without military escalation. Trump's insistence on using Marines and destroyers is less about results and more about projecting an image of strength, a facade that crumbles under the weight of his own incompetence. Trump's Caribbean crusade is a diplomatic disaster in the making. Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum has firmly rejected U.S. military intervention, emphasizing her country's sovereignty in a statement to the New York Times. This snub undermines years of U.S.-Mexico cooperation on drug enforcement, as Trump's unilateral actions alienate a key ally. Venezuela's response is even more volatile. Maduro's call for 4.5 million militiamen to defend the nation's seas, skies, and lands is likely exaggerated, but it fuels anti-American sentiment and strengthens his grip on power. As the Washington Office on Latin America notes, such provocations risk galvanizing Venezuelans against foreign intervention. Even if they distrust Maduro, the international community is sounding alarms. The 1989 U.S. invasion of Panama, which targeted Manuel Noriega on drug charges, was widely condemned as a violation of international law. Trump's current gambit risks similar backlash, isolating the U.S. at a time when global alliances are already strained. His simultaneous tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China, ostensibly to curb fentanyl smuggling, further erode diplomatic goodwill. This isn't America first. It's America alone, led by a president too busy chasing headlines to consider the consequences. The human cost of this fiasco is staggering. The 4,000 Marines and sailors deployed to the Caribbean are being thrust into a mission that's poorly defined and legally questionable. Trained for conventional warfare, not drug interdiction, these service members face risks that far outweigh the operation's dubious benefits. A senior official told the Miami Herald that the mission's primary goal is surveillance, but the potential for targeted strikes raises the specter of escalation. One miscalculation could lead to a firefight. putting American lives in jeopardy for a cause that reeks of political theater. Venezuelans, already suffering under Maduro's regime, face even graver risks. Trump's designation of cartels as terrorist organizations could justify strikes that harm civilians, as seen in past U.S. interventions. Human rights groups warn that such actions often exacerbate suffering in targeted regions. With ordinary people caught in the crossfire, Maduro's mobilization of militias, complete with promises of rifles and missiles, heightens the risk of internal repression as he uses the U.S. threat to justify crackdowns on dissent. Trump's actions are making life harder for Venezuelans, not easier. At home, Americans are left to deal with the fallout. The billions spent on this military spectacle could fund addiction treatment programs or bolster law enforcement efforts to disrupt domestic drug networks. Instead, Trump is squandering resources on a show of force that does little to address the opioid crisis. His claim to be protecting the homeland, echoed by Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, is a hollow platitude when his policies prioritize optics over substance.